Hello there, everybody. I'm back again with a look at John, the end of chapter 10, which we didn't finish yet, and then on to chapter 11, which is a really great chapter about Lazarus. So we're going to go through the end of chapter 10 kind of quickly and then right into chapter 11. Remember last time in chapter 10, Jesus had said one of his I am statements. I am the good shepherd. I am the gate. And so keeping on with that, it says, it was now winter, and Jesus was in Jerusalem at the time of the Festival of Dedication. Now, the Festival of Dedication is what we would call now Hanukkah, which is where they light candles to celebrate the fact that the Lord delivered them from bondage of the Greeks, and they were, I think he did a miracle or something where he kept candles lit with the oil of only one day. He kept them lit for like 8 days. So this is what they celebrate at Hanukkah. And it is in the wintertime. He was in the temple walking through a section known as Solomon's Colonnade. I love how John puts these little details in, like it's an eyewitness account. That's the thing that is really, he's trying to make a point here. This is real. I saw it. It happened, So he's telling where he is and when he is. He gives the who, what, when, and where, Jesus was in the temple walking through the section known as Solomon's Colonnade. The people surrounded him and asked, "How long are you going to keep us in suspense? If you are the Messiah, tell us plainly." They're done with this, symbolism. But Jesus replied, "I've already told you, and you don't believe me. The proof is in the work I do in my Father's name." So this is what the miracles are for. They're to prove that Jesus is God and that he is Messiah. But you don't believe me because you are not my sheep. My sheep listen to my voice. I know them and they follow me. I give them eternal life and they will never perish. No one can snatch them away from me. What a wonderful feeling of security this gives us. That if we're the child of God, no one can snatch us away. Okay, we can choose to go a different way. We can choose at a time to kind of turn our backs. But no one can snatch us away. For my Father has given them to me, and he is more powerful than anyone else. No one can snatch them from the Father's hand. The Father and I are one. Once again, the people picked up stones to kill him. Notice every time they pick up stones to kill him, it's because they think he has blasphemed. He has called himself God. Jesus said, "At my Father's direction, I have done many good works. For which one are you going to stone me?" They replied, "We're stoning you not for any good work, but for blasphemy. You, a mere man, claim to be God." John wants to put this in because he wants to show us that many people did not believe that Jesus was God, and he kept claiming it. And the proof was in the miracles, that was to be the proof of the fact that he said he was God himself. Jesus replied, "It is written in your own scriptures that God said to certain leaders of the people, 'I say you are gods.'" Now this is in Psalm 82, verse 6. And what he did at that time in that verse was, say that when you judge, you are acting like gods on earth, and that God had given that authority to certain leaders. This is verse 35. "And you know that scriptures cannot be altered. So, if those people who received God's message were called gods, quote unquote, why do you call it blasphemy when I say I am the Son of God? After all, the Father set me apart and sent me into the world. Don't believe me unless I carry out my Father's work." So here again, he's saying, I'm doing all these miracles to prove that I'm from the Father. "But if I do his work, believe in the evidence of the miraculous works I've done, even if you don't believe me. Then you will know and understand that the Father is in me and I am in the Father." Back to this thing, I'm God again, right? I'm with the Father, I'm one with him. Once again, they tried to arrest him, but he got away and left them. He went beyond the Jordan River near the place where John was first baptizing and stayed there for a while, and many followed him. John didn't perform miraculous signs, they remarked to one another, but everything he said about this man has come true. And many who were there believed in him. So he's going back to John, to the area where John the Baptist was, because those people were already disciples of John. And John the Baptist had been the one that pointed out, Jesus is the Messiah. He's the one. And John did baptism, and he did great preaching to bring people back to God, but he did not do miracles. And so they're saying John didn't do these miracles, but he did point out Jesus and say, here's the one who's greater than I. And so many people then became disciples of Jesus. So now we're going to go on to chapter 11. A man named Lazarus was sick. He lived in Bethany with his sisters Mary and Martha. This is the Mary who later poured the expensive perfume on the Lord's feet and wiped them with her hair. Her brother Lazarus was sick, so the two sisters sent a message to Jesus telling him, Lord, your friend was very sick. So what do we learn from this? A couple of things I was thinking about. First of all, Mary and Martha, we already know what's going to happen, but Mary and Martha were obviously disciples of Jesus because later on Mary is still with him. No matter what happens in this scenario, Mary remains a disciple because she's the one who poured the expensive perfume on the Lord's feet and wiped them with her hair. So later on, she's still in the picture, and she's still a disciple. So this is a family, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. I don't know if they live in the same house or not, but they probably live in the same area. And Jesus is a friend of theirs. So, he's saying, these are my friends. These are my disciples. So what am I going to do about this? When Jesus heard about it, he said, Lazarus' sickness will not end in death. No, it happened for the glory of God, so that the Son of God will receive glory from this. Now, he refers to himself as the Son of God. And so what he's saying is, the glory that's going to come out of this is going to go in two directions. First of all, it's going to glorify God. But second of all, it's going to glorify the Son of God. So this glory that Jesus creates in the miracle also reflects to glorify God. So, although Jesus loved Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, he stayed where he was for the next 2 days. That is really shocking, isn't it? It's another situation where God is going to bring good out of bad. And if Jesus rushes there before Lazarus dies, there's not going to be a miracle. Jesus says, no, this happened to glorify God. And so he knew Lazarus was going to die, so he stayed put for 2 days. Now, I think the disciples think he's staying there for a different reason, because listen what happens in verse 7. Finally, he said to his disciples, let's go back to Judea. But his disciples objected. Rabbi, only a few days ago, the people in Judea were trying to stone you. Are you going there again? So they're thinking, even though Lazarus is sick, Jesus is going to stay here because he was in danger when he was over there, right? They were going to stone him. They said, you're blasphemous. We're going to kill you. And he evaded capture and evaded the stoning, and the disciples think this is why he's staying over here where John the Baptist was preaching. He's not going to go back to Bethany because that was in that same area where people were trying to stone him. So Jesus replied, there are 12 hours of daylight every day. During the day, people can walk safely. They can see because they have the light of this world. But at night, there is danger of stumbling because they have no light. Now, I didn't understand this verse at all, so I looked up a bunch of things online, you can look up these things where people explain different verses of the Bible, and this was one that I put in a search command and went to a couple of study sites online to figure out why all of a sudden he's talking about day and night, and most of the scholars there believed that this was an analogy Jesus was using as far as the day being your life and the night being your death. and saying that it was still daytime for 12 hours meant it wasn't his time yet. The time appointed for his death by God the Father was not ready yet. So Jesus knew that he could go there and not be killed because it wasn't his time yet. It was still daylight, you know. And he often talks about this. He says, while the light is in the world, you know, he's meaning himself, you know, do this while the light is in the world, because it's still a time period where he is there. Then he said, in verse 11, then he said, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but now I will go and wake him up. Now, again, the disciples are thinking literally. So they say, Lord, if he's sleeping, he'll soon get better. They thought Jesus meant Lazarus was simply sleeping, but Jesus meant Lazarus was dead. So he told them plainly, Lazarus is dead. But for your sakes, I'm glad I wasn't there, because now you will really believe. Come, let's go and see him. So even for the disciples, he knows that this kind of miracle of raising someone from the dead, this is going to be astounding, even more astounding than healing the sick or making the blind to see. Thomas, nicknamed the twin, said to his fellow disciples, let's go too and die with Jesus. He's willing to die for Jesus, but he thinks that, he obviously doesn't understand this analogy with day and night. He thinks if they go back to this area, Jesus is going to be stoned. He's going to be killed. This is verse 17. When Jesus arrived at Bethany, he was told that Lazarus had already been in his grave for 4 days. Bethany was only a few miles down the road from Jerusalem, and many of the people had come to console Mary and Martha in their loss. So there were lots of people there. This is another reason why Jesus has delayed. It isn't just Mary and Martha's word for it now. There's going to be other witnesses. Lots of people from Jerusalem are going to be there. Verse 20. When Martha got word that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed in the house. Now, in other stories of Mary and Martha, I always think Martha gets the bad end of the stick. But here, I think Martha is much more proactive and much more wanting to understand what's going on with Jesus, and a strong disciple. Because look what she says to him in verse 21. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know that God will give you whatever you ask. She hasn't lost faith. She has not lost faith in Jesus, even though he tarried for 2 days. She says, if you'd been here, I know Lazarus wouldn't have died, but even now that Lazarus is dead, I know God will give you whatever you ask. I think that is astounding faith. I mean, really, she's showing that she understands. Jesus told her, your brother will rise again. Yes, Martha said, he will rise when everyone else rises on the last day. Okay, she obviously already knows about the last day, that everyone will rise on the last day to be with Jesus. But Jesus told her, I am the resurrection and the life. Anyone who believes in me will live even after dying. Everyone who lives in me and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this, Martha? You know, he's questioning her faith. He's making her process this. I think this is what God seems to do to me when I am looking at a scripture verse and I don't understand it. You know, it's almost like God is saying to me, do you believe this, Karen? Will you look at this deeply? Will you process it in your own life? Not just read it and say, wow, I think, Aunt Mabel would really benefit from reading this verse. But, would you think about this deeply and see how it applies to you? I think that's the question Jesus asks when we read his word. And I think the other thing that stands out to me here is this I am statement. I am the resurrection and the life. We've had I am the living water. I am the good shepherd. I am the gate. Before Abraham was, I am. And now we have, I am the resurrection and the life. Who else could be the resurrection and the life but God? I mean, he is saying, I'm the one that gives life. I'm the one that's going to raise people from the dead. I'm the one who's going to be the way to eternal life. Do you believe this, Martha? And not just it's not just saying, like, do you believe it up here? But he's saying, do you really take this in, Martha? Are you really taking this in and making it yours and believing it and living it? That's what Jesus asks. So she replies, yes, Lord. Right away. I have always believed you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one who has come into the world from God. So she's got it down. As she figures out the theology, doesn't she? She's recognizing he's Messiah. And then she returned to Mary. And she called Mary aside from the mourners and told her, the teacher is here and wants to see you. So Mary immediately went out to him. Mary's in there crying and mourning with the mourners. And it's Martha who gives her a little nudge to say, Jesus is here. That's more important than this. Go out and see what he has to say. But Jesus stayed outside the village, the place where Martha met him. And when the people who were at the house consoling Mary saw her leave so hastily, they assumed she was going to Lazarus' grave to weep. And so they followed her there. Another part of God's plan. She's going out to meet Jesus. Guess what? There's going to be more witnesses. All these people from Jerusalem are following her. When Mary arrived, she saw Jesus. She fell at his feet and said, Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died. Now, she doesn't add what Martha added. Martha added, even now I know God will give you whatever you ask. Mary didn't say that. She said, if you had been here, he wouldn't have died. When Jesus saw her weeping and saw all the other people wailing with her, a deep anger welled up in him, and he was deeply troubled. Now, he wasn't mad at Mary. He was mad at the fact that things happen in this life because of sin, because sin is in the world, Things happen to steal people's joy. They have to mourn. They weep. This made him very upset, that people have to go through this. So when Jesus saw her weeping, and saw that the other people were wailing with her, a deep anger welled up within him, and he was deeply troubled. Where have you put him? He asked. And they told him, Lord, come and see. And then Jesus wept. Okay? He weeps because in the beginning, when he was there at creation, everything was perfect. Now it's not perfect. And that's why people die. And it's weeping for what humanity has lost and how we have to suffer. The people who were standing nearby said, see how much he loved him. I'm sure that's another reason he wept. He wept because his friends had to go through this. They were dear to him. But some of them said, this man healed a blind man. Couldn't he have kept Lazarus from dying? Jesus was still angry when he arrived at the tomb, a cave with a stone rolled across its entrance. Roll the stone aside, Jesus told them. But Martha, the man's sister, protested, Lord, he's been dead for 4 days. The smell will be terrible. And Jesus responded, remember he said, Martha, do you believe this? He responded, didn't I tell you you would see God's glory if you believe? He's saying, Mary, I just explained this to you and I asked you if you believed it. So they rolled the stone aside. And then Jesus looked up into heaven and said, Father, I thank you for hearing me. Jesus can't do miracles without this connection to the Father. He is God. He is with God. God is with him at all times. The Father is with him. He is with the Father. This is where the power comes from. He's not just doing magic tricks. He's doing miracles in the power of God because he is God. So he says, Father, I thank you for hearing me. You always hear me, but I said it out loud for the sake of all these people standing here so they will believe that you sent me. He doesn't want the people around to believe that he's just doing something in his own power. He wants them to see that it's God's power in him because he is God. Then Jesus shouted, "Lazarus, come out." And the dead man came out. His hands and his feet were bound in the grave clothes. His face was wrapped in a headcloth, and Jesus told them, "Unwrap him and let him go." We're going to stop there. Of course, the religious leaders will have a big to-do about this one, because they always do. After every miracle, there's some kind of a thing, some kind of a confrontation with these religious leaders. But what a great story. What a great story of Jesus' humanity, how much he cares, of his divinity, how much power he has, and also the idea that everything that happens in our lives can be eventually for God's glory. Even the bad things. God can turn that around and make it to his glory and make it a better situation for us. And he's asking us, do you believe that? Just like he's asking Mary, "Mary, do you believe? Do you believe what I said?" So kind of a really, really great miracle here. And another I am statement. I am the resurrection and the life. Ending there for today, and we'll finish chapter 11 and go on to 12 in the next session. And thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate it. Have a great day.